Hi, you're listening to Coffee and Conspiracies
with Ellie
and Riley.
This is a podcast about conspiracy theories and coffee recommendations.
My coffee recommendation for this episode is an iced white mocha.
And my recommendation is an iced pumpkin chai latte from Dunkin'.
In this episode, we will be covering the story and conspiracies surrounding the mysterious disappearance of Jodi Huisentruit.
Jodi Sue Huisentruit was born on June 5, 1968, in Long Prairie, Minnesota. She was the youngest child of Maurice and Imogen Huisentruit. Jodi won state golf 2 years in a row in high school. Then, after high school, she studied mass communications and speech communications at St. Cloud State University. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in 1990. Then she started her broadcasting career. Her first broadcasting job was at KGAN in Cedar Rapids. Then she worked for a station in Minnesota, then returned to Iowa to work at KIMT in Mason City, Iowa. On Monday, June 26, 1995, Jodi anchored her morning shift at KINT from 6 to 7 a.m. Then, at 9 a.m., she attended the annual Mason City Chamber of Commerce golf tournament fundraiser. She played for a little while before getting rained out. The group that she was with then went back to the clubhouse to hang out before going home mid-afternoon to change into dry clothes. Around 3:30 that day, Jodi went back to the country club. She had dinner with her team, and then around 8 p.m., she said goodbye to her team and headed home. Two of the members of her team did mention that Jodi had been getting annoyed by numerous phone calls and did plan on changing her number soon. At 8:24 that night, Jodi called her friend Kelly from Mississippi. Kelly was not home, so Jodi talked to her husband. He said that Jodi did not seem worried and was very cheerful. It is unclear where Jodi was the next couple of hours that night. John Vansons, who was a much older friend of Jodi's, told police that Jodi had stopped by his house that night to watch a video of Jodi's surprise birthday party that he hosted earlier that month. Jodi would normally arrive at work around 3 a.m. to anchor the 6 a.m. news, but on Monday, June 26, 1995, she did not show up. Her producer, Amy Kunz, called Jodi and woke her up. Amy said everything sounded okay and that Jodi would be into work soon, as she lived about 5 minutes away from the station. Around 5 a.m., when Jodi had still not shown up, Amy tried calling her again. This time, Jodi did not answer. Amy continued to write and produce the morning show. Amy ended up anchoring the 6 a.m. newscast herself. Then, around 7 a.m., Amy asked a coworker to call the police to check on Jodi. At 7:13 a.m., the Mason City police got a call requesting a welfare check to Jodi's apartment. At 7:16, the officer arrived at the scene. When the Mason City Police Department arrived at the scene, it was evident that a crime occurred. Jodi's car was still in the lot just steps from the building, and there was a sign of a struggle, specifically drag marks on the pavement. There were a couple things that were found scattered by the car, including a bent car key, red high heels, a blow dryer, and a pair of earrings. There was a partial print that was found on Jodi's vehicle, but nothing looked out of place when police checked her apartment. According to interviews that were done that morning with neighbors, a scream was heard around 4:30 a.m., but nobody ended up calling the police. Also, a man who lived up the street from Jodi's apartments said he saw a light-colored van in her parking lot as he drove to work around that time, but the van has never been found. Within hours of Jodi's disappearance, search parties gathered and conducted a search that eventually reached hundreds of miles through Mason City and beyond. At the beginning, the private investigator that the Huisentruit family hired believed that she was a victim of a sexual homicide by a serial killer. Another theory is that Jodi was working on a story about illegal drugs in Mason City. Someone did not want this information shared, and so they could have kidnapped her. Others believe that because of her very public job, she was being stalked. Somebody could have felt a lot closer to her as she was a newscaster and became obsessed with her. The stalker would have known everything about her, how early in the morning she leaves for work, when she gets home, her car, and her entire life schedule. Jodi did report being stalked by a black truck, but because the windows were tilted, she never knew who it was driving.
I feel like this case is a really hard one to discuss in terms of the different theories surrounding it because there's just so little information on what did happen. You know, she was there 1 second and now she's not. No one was ever really named a suspect or anything like that. But I feel like out of the 3 different theories that you listed, the serial killer one is the one that stood out to me as one that I could rule out.
I would agree. I would say that one's probably the least likely.
Yeah, I just feel like if it was a serial killer, they would have connected her case to other similar cases because serial killers usually have a pattern of their crimes, and they never really did that. So that one doesn't seem very likely to me.
I would agree.
And then the other two, the stalker, and then the one that she was covering, like a drug related type of story, those two seem more likely to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that like her working on a case could make sense because obviously that is her job.
Right.
And then if she's researching something, she finds out information that somebody doesn't want shared to the public, they know that she knows it. They could think that there's just one solution to not letting that information get out or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think if it was the drug related story that she was going to air, it would be more of a group effort. Like everyone involved in the drug thing would kind of attack her instead of just maybe one person.
Yes.
Or it's obviously premeditated then, if it was that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If it was the stalker, I mean, it would also be premeditated, most likely.
Yeah.
And that one seems more likely to me because that's so easy if they know every single thing about her to just like hide outside of her house.
Yeah, especially the part of how I was saying some people can feel like they're really close to newscasters or news anchors because they're like, oh, I wake up with them every morning, or I watch them every day eating breakfast, those types of things, and they're like in their house with them, when really it's not like that at all, but some people can feel that way, and somebody could have felt really close to her as they watch her every day on the news and know everything about her, and that's easier to do in like her job situation than some others.
Because she's such a public figure.
Yes. So to kind of set the picture of what police and investigators think might have happened that morning is that Jodi would have obviously been woken up by Amy, her producer, an hour late by a phone call, and then probably had her stuff set out and then like left, because then around 4:30 there was the scream that was heard, so we know she was outside by at least 4:30 or outside of her apartment.
Right.
And then because of the bent car key, they think that her key was probably already inside of her car, and then she was probably grabbed from behind, and then that's pulled from behind, and then that's what bent the car key. And then her shoes, earrings, and then hair stuff, which I'm assuming is probably stuff she was just holding, were all left by the car, kind of scattered. And then there were the drag marks in the ground, which is probably which were made when she was getting pulled away by the person behind her.
That would make sense, yeah. And then another thing that I thought of, which wasn't one of the theories that you listed, is that what if someone kind of, like that she knew, spent the night with her the night before, and that was why she woke up late because, you know, that's not her regular routine, like having someone stay with her. So that was why she woke up late, and then that person was the one who kidnapped her or killed her, whatever may have happened to her. And no one would have known that that person was staying there because she didn't tell anyone. And it would have only been for a few hours if you think about it, because she got back from her friend's house like later at night, right?
Yes.
It was at least after 8, I think you said,
Yes.
or around 8. And she would have had to wake up if she wanted to be at the studio by 3, like between 2 and like 2:45. Like I don't know how far away she lived.
Yeah,
from
about
that
5
studio.
minutes from the studio.
Right. So he or she, whoever was staying there, couldn't have even been there that long. So I feel like that's another possibility. And that would also explain the car in the parking lot, the van, I think it was.
That the neighbors saw.
That the neighbors
Yeah.
saw. So I think that's another possibility.
In May of 2001, Jodi was declared legally dead by a judge in Cerro Gordo County, Iowa. But there have not been any advances in her case, and it still remains unsolved today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Coffee and Conspiracies with Ellie and Riley. We hope you found a new conspiracy to keep on your mind and a new coffee to try.
Come back for the next episode for another conspiracy or scary story that keeps you up at night.